is the Spurs POSTCAST, your instant game reaction for the San Antonio Spurs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, you knew a 11-game win streak was not going to last forever, but having it end in a complete Madison Square Garden meltdown doesn't make life any easier, and that's what it was tonight for the San Antonio Spurs. Welcome into the Spurs Postcast right here on Locked On Spurs, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the world. He is NBA champion Devin Brown. I'm Casey Viera, coming off what was a very ugly afternoon for your San Antonio Spurs today, going down in convincing fashion, 114-89 to the New York Knicks. Their 11-game win streak is by the wayside on an afternoon that saw them just look a half step behind from start to finish, my friend, and ultimately it catches up with them. And an Eastern Conference contender, perhaps, if things go right, that's the team they see play in June. Maybe, perhaps, but if the Spurs look like they did tonight, man, I don't even know if they're making it through April. Not their night this evening.
No, we got some interesting things to talk about. Casey, let's get into it.
This is what you'll be talking about.
So, of course, third meeting between the two teams this season. The first technically didn't count, but we saw it with our own eyes. And I know if the Spurs won the cup, we would be saying it did count. So for the sake of that, the Knicks, of course, taking the cup. They met on New Year's Eve, which was that great Julian Champagnie 11 3-pointer rally in San Antonio. So this is the third time they've done it this year. One and only time, the first and only time that they're doing it in Madison Square Garden. And it looked great. It looks fantastic in the first 6 to 8 minutes or so. Open on a 19-7 run. The Knicks actually only made 3 of their first 18 shots. Mm-hmm. Then what were probably of many of turning points in this game, what really turned the tide early was the fact that Stephon Castle started on Jalen Brunson. Played very well, forced him to only take 1 shot, which he missed. Castle goes to the bench, back into the third quarter. Dylan Harper checks in. Jalen Brunson goes off. Goes for 10 points the remainder of the third quarter of play, remainder of the first quarter of play, I should say, rather. And the Knicks, what turned into a 19-7 deficit started, I should say, turned into a 22-21 advantage. That expands because between the back end of that and the early portions of the second quarter, the Spurs ultimately are looking at what turns into a 26-2 run. And the Knickerbockers go up by 16. Spurs fortunately get it back within 10 come the break. But it was the fewest points in a first half this season for San Antonio. Shot 37%, 41 points. And to their credit, though, the game didn't really get away in the third quarter. It stayed between 8, 12, 15. A few tries that the Spurs had to do that, and it was with a lot of second chance points, offensive rebounds, some sloppiness from New York, and it kept them within reach and ultimately down 11 after 3 quarters of play. So still, I mean, we just saw them a few days removed from coming back from 15 down in Toronto, and as a Spurs fan, you're saying, all right, this is reasonable for the time being, and they did get it to 8, but a 13-1 run, spearheaded by the likes of Josh Hart's hustle and effort, spearheaded by the likes of Karl-Anthony Towns, doing very impressive things on the glass. It's a 13-1 midway through the through the fourth quarter that ultimately turns the tide, and it would put the lead back into double digits and ultimately in a blowout fashion. So they go down by 25. It was maybe not as bad as that, but it wasn't good. Was not good in the slightest. 114-89. Vic goes for 25-13, 7 turnovers. De'Aaron Fox, not a good night. 7 points, 6 assists, 3 of 10 from the field. They shoot 9 of 34 from 3, so that's just about a quarter. Get out rebounded plus 13. The Knicks do. And the big thing, turn the ball over 22 times tonight. Led to 24 points off turnovers. Just felt a half step behind from the jump. And as a result, a team like the Knicks, they're gonna make you pay for it, and they did.
Yeah, and one of the things that you have to give New York credit for is that they ran the Spurs off the line. They know that they've been, shooting it at a staggering pace here, recently. So they made San Antonio play different. San Antonio didn't have a flow to their offense really all game, but definitely when they got in those key situations, down 6, down 8, They weren't able to come down and run a play, run anything through Victor. New York did a good job holding him in check for the most part, but it was the others. And if it's a learning lesson for San Antonio, when a team runs you off the line, what else are you going to do in order to stay in that basketball game? Casey, we didn't see it tonight. The 50-50 balls, all New York's way. Offensive rebounds. New York hammered San Antonio on the glass. So San Antonio is going to have to use this game, go back to the drawing board and go, okay, and teams are going to do this come playoff time. If teams run us off the line, what are we going to do to win a basketball game?
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. You're right. And as a result, you look at the two losses that they've had against the Knicks this season, and they both came in very similar fashion. They were competitive, largely for the most part, 3 quarters. In the cup game, it was a lot of the 50-50 balls that went the Knicks' fashion. Today, when they lost, it was within reach for a good portion of the game. And what happened in the fourth quarter that the Knicks pulled away? It was a lot of the 50-50 balls that New York was beating them to. In my mind, that's a cautionary thing. We'll hit on that more in a minute. But beyond that, though, yeah.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Casey, but you've been in New York for 5 days. Like, really? If you needed to recharge your battery anywhere, I think you'd want to do it there. So to come out with the lack of energy that San Antonio had, and I brought this up in our squad show. The game was at noon. That's different. That's very different than what the Spurs are used to. But I don't know. I can play, and I have played in front of Ben Stiller and Tracy Morgan. But when you get Larry David in the building, and for those of the viewers that don't know who that is, that's royalty right there. He wrote Seinfeld. He has great show, Curb Your Enthusiasm. I just think the Spurs were nervous today, Casey.
Whoopi Goldberg in the building, right?
Royalty.
Royalty. Hey, turning point tonight was, in my mind, something that was a blown opportunity for San Antonio.
Right.
A situation where the Knicks were a little bit vulnerable and the Spurs just did not take advantage of it.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Karl-Anthony Towns is a walking 4 fouls as it is through 3 quarters of play. So that's one thing. You knew that was coming. But Jalen Brunson, a little bit different on that aspect of it. Picks up his 4th foul at the 3-minute mark in the third quarter, back end of the third quarter. Yeah, 3 minutes and change. The Spurs are down 11 at that point. Jalen Brunson checks back into the game with 7:29 to go in the fourth quarter. Not only do the Spurs not make up any ground, the Spurs lose ground because when he's back in, the Knicks are up 16. That is, I think, kind of speaks to the fact that the Spurs just did not take advantage of the opportunities tonight. The Spurs just did not capitalize when things were there. They did get back within 8 during that run. And when Brunson checked out of the game, there were signs that, hey, the Spurs, this is their window to get into it because the Knicks ran some stagnant offensive situations over there where you had Jose Alvarado stuck in a spot where he's, isolating with the shot clock winding down. And then, they kind of had to bail him out or got bailed out on a foul call, whatever it was. But point being, this was their shot to do something, get back within it, and especially a day that you didn't have the energy that was going on and didn't do it.
So when you talk about situations like that and to start the second half, the Spurs were aggressive in their sets, not effective, but aggressive. Well, I believe in the spite of everything that you're saying, the Knicks also had like 3 team fouls. Well, we all know following the NBA, when you get to 5, you're shooting. When you're in a game like this, you have to get to the free throw line and try and chip at that lead as much as you can. With it being at 11, if we take a couple of points, get a defensive stop, come down, drive it, get fouled again, we're doing a lot of scoring with with the clock being stopped. Brunson goes out with 4 fouls. The Spurs did nothing with it. But you have to give the Knicks and their bench, Diawara, Shamet, those guys like that, you have to give them credit, Casey, because everything that the Spurs tried to do, they matched it and topped it. So at the end of the day, although the Spurs did string a couple stops together, they just, like I said, the offense wasn't flowing and there was nothing there.
No, in any capacity. You try not to get wrapped up, but De'Aaron Fox obviously going to be taking a beating after something like this. I guess understandably so, maybe not understandably so, but that kind of always goes back to someone has to be kind of scapegoated at times, right? But in this sense, when you put up 7 points, 6 boards, or 6 assists on 3 of 10 shooting, and you're largely, not impactful on the defensive end too, you're going to take heat. Because these big time games like they've had like that haven't worked. But I mean, at the same time, Stephon Castle wasn't great on the offensive end, had that great start defensively, but clearly wasn't enough to turn the tide entirely. But for me, I'm not getting lost in the immediacy of this moment of this loss, because the grander scheme, they have played well. You come back from a rodeo road trip, potentially only losing one of those games. I know it's a rodeo road trip, and you're still very much in reach of that number 1 spot. So it was not an easy watch tonight on a Sunday afternoon. A lot of people cut time out of their morning for that, unfortunately.
Hey, Casey, the briskets went on at 10 a.m.
Yep.
Everybody was tailgating early for this one.
Yep.
But it's okay. Like you said, the Spurs have been playing well. Kind of had a setback tonight, but they have the roster. They have the coaches that'll get them back. Get refocused. Sometimes you got to get kicked, around like this, but they'll get back to it.
Hope the brisket was good, because the viewing experience wasn't. That's for sure. All right. Coming up on the other side, I want to talk the bigger picture here, because going into the postseason, I think what today showed is something a little bit cautionary that can get into the way of the Spurs championship chances. So while we still have time, I want to hit on that a little bit, pick Devin's brain a little bit, because amazingly enough, or not amazingly enough, championship conversations and getting in the way of the championship are very, very real for this Spurs team. And today was a learning experience on that front. Coming off of a ugly defeat today in New York at Madison Square Garden, as the 11-game win streak goes by the wayside, and they go down 114-89 to the New York Knicks. More on that in a second, but first, let's pause to talk about some of our friends who help in putting this program on the air. And that includes our pals over there at Prize Picks. If you took the under on a lot of things related to the Spurs today, you're feeling pretty good. If you took the over, it's a rough afternoon, because you were dealing with not only the loss, but you probably missed out some change. So we're going to make you feel better. Shoot your shots on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in your lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. It's a simple way to play. Just pick more or less, like I was saying, on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if your picks are right, you cash in. If they're not, well, you carry on with life. Everything from the NBA, baseball, hockey, UFC, and more. Plus, they got features like the early payouts, where if you're anything like me, you want to get your money early because you're just not a betting man like I am. That works out too. So download the app, use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first 5. Code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50 after you play your first 5 with Prize Picks. It is good to be right. Hey, I have a question I want to pose to you guys at home, and I think the answer is yes ahead of time, though. Today might not have made you feel better about it. You ever want to go to the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is actually giving you that chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. So here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll be automatically entered for a shot to win a trip to the finals for 2. And not just to the game, for everything. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. So visit FanDuel.com, gets you started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for a chance to win a trip to the finals come this summer. Play your game with FanDuel, of course, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the top here,
Okay.
I think that there are a couple of teams that are getting in the way of preventing a San Antonio Spurs championship. And it's because of a recurring thing. And both of them were on TV today.
Right.
One of them is the Denver Nuggets. The other is the New York Knicks. Aside from that, I'm not particularly sold that a whole lot of teams can beat them in a 7-game series. And here's why. What we have learned, at least on the Knicks side of things, they are one Julian Champagny nuclear run away from being swept in the season series by the Knicks. And I think it's a familiar recipe to what we see on the Nuggets side of things, which is elite guard play. Brunson, Jamal Murray, all-star caliber big man stretch five play. In Jokic's case, elite. Karl-Anthony Towns the other. Big, strong, physical wings who can shoot the basketball. Bridges, OG Anunoby, to a certain extent, Josh Hart, Peyton Watson, Aaron Gordon on the other side. Veteran teams that have lost and won at the highest of level, at least on the Denver side of things. That's the aspect, that's the recipe that has me a little bit worried. Whether they face the Knicks in the playoffs, in the finals, obviously that's what it would be. It's a different story. Realistically, they're going to have to go through the Denver Nuggets. Today, for me, was very cautionary on that front.
All right. So, when we look at it and what led to our success in 05 is being able to play 3 or 4, maybe 5 different ways at times. And I'm talking about different styles of basketball. So when you play against a Denver, this year, you kind of have a good recipe for them, had some success. You know that you just can't let Joker get off and get everybody else involved. All right. We'll let somebody else get off, but it can't be him and everybody else, right, with them. Now, when you talk about this New York Knicks team today running San Antonio off the three-point line, it forces Mitch and his staff to go back and say, hey, we just can't rely on the other characters hitting threes or Wemby getting hot in a game. We're going to have to win these games different ways. So today was a life lesson in that sense. Now, when you talk about them, and I like what you're saying with Denver, some other teams are going to have to show you a little bit more. Minnesota has a big challenge going into Denver today here late in the season. So, but when you talk about what the Spurs are going to have to do moving forward is can't rely on threes. Wemby, it's got to be something else. You got to get Fox going, right? You got to get Castle where he's comfortable, where he can give you 12 to 18 points, yet guard the other guy. So he's got to be big. So the Spurs are going to have to, go back to the drawing board a little bit. And guess what, Casey? They got a tough text coming next, too. Because the team they're getting ready to play is going to be good as well.
Yeah, Philly has had really quite the bounce back of a season. When last year was about as miserable as it gets, I guess the only way to go is up. But what we've learned this year from the 76ers side of things is that Tyrese Maxey, it's his team through and through. Understandably so. It's really been that way. It should have been that way for 3 years now. Edgecomb's been very good. And collectively, they're finding a little bit more of an identity with this squad. Joel Embiid's going to be out on Tuesday for what it's worth. But that's always the caveat of what it is. It's a good bounce back spot for the Spurs. It's a good bounce back spot because I think when you have a loss like today and doing it in as convincing fashion, you don't have a week and a half to wait before you get on the floor. You'd like for it to probably be tomorrow. You'd like for it to probably be tomorrow so you could erase today, but you live with it. I think we'll learn a lot on that front about this team.
I think so too.
How they close out a road trip like this. And for being honest, a win Tuesday would be major given what's on the other side of things once they come back home for that big homestand, because you have the Pistons on Thursday, right? The first of the back-to-back with the Clippers. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what it looks like. We'll definitely see. Yeah. One thing I do know is that the Spurs will not see our player of the game tonight for the rest of the season unless they meet again in June, and that probably is a good thing.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Josh Hart, the requisite pain for a lot of teams. 10 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, a bunch of the offensive variety. Things turned for the better once he got going. And as a result, Knickerbockers victorious today.
Yeah, so we gave it to Josh Hart just to, clarify why we did that is because he's the glue guy. He's the guy that calls all the coverages defensively. He's the guy on offense that gets everybody involved. And he was the guy that when the Spurs were down 12, 14, whatever it was, hit the big three that really put an early dagger into the San Antonio. So congratulations to him. Just another night, and everybody in New York knows, how he plays. That's how he plays. Congratulations on a great night. You earned it.
We said at the start of the season the Spurs needed the likes of a Josh Hart type of deal, right? And I think I speak for everyone that Keldon Johnson has become that guy. Like Josh Hart was like the archetype of what the Spurs needed, and Keldon Johnson has become exactly that. So the Knicks Josh Hart just got the better of the Spurs Josh Hart tonight.
Yeah.
Hey, you live with it. Next time you're going to be talking to us will be tomorrow, Monday, 9:15. Devin and I will be back for our Spurs squad show, like we always are every week. Days change, it's because of the games. So be sure to come back 9:15, and then of course next time we get together on the post game, that will be Tuesday following Spurs 76ers, another early start as the Rodeo Road Trip comes to a close. Appreciate everyone coming out on a Sunday. A rare matinee afternoon action, but you guys, as you've always been, cutting time out of your day to hang out with us, and obviously we greatly appreciate you for doing exactly that. I know you might not have appreciated the Spurs performance today, hey, but listen, that's what the bounce back is for on Tuesday. We'll look forward to hanging out with you guys then. So for my good buddy, Mr. NBA champion Devin Brown, I'm Casey Viera. Enjoy what's left of your weekend, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.